this computer, right? Now, Geir, we are recording.
Now we're recording, and we are full house.
Full house.
With Catherine and Brendan and Brian and Dexter and myself.
This week, ladies and gentlemen, boys and squirrels, we have the one, the only, the amazing, the great and powerful. Put your hands together for Dexter Gelfand, all the way from the United States of America. Woo!
There we go.
There you go.
Yeah. Now, the funny thing about this one is that we're going to talk about men and loneliness. And here we are, 4 men on a Zoom call. It should be actually 1. and no woman. Just 1 man talking about his own loneliness and getting everybody depressed. That would be the setting, I guess. But I actually wonder what I'm doing in this webinar, because as I said to Brendan earlier this day, I sort of thought about this for maybe 15 seconds, and then I talked to Nicholas in the morning, my son, and I said, what the heck am I doing in that webinar? I mean, I really enjoy being alone. And then Brendan said, yeah, but it's different about being alone and being lonely. Because if you're being lonely, then there is some negative emotions to it. And then I said, well, then I don't have any personal experience being lonely, ever. So I can talk about this webinar, or in this webinar, from a purely academic viewpoint, without being able to relate to this thing about men and loneliness. Just like Catherine is unable to relate to the subject of men and loneliness. So me and Catherine, we are the outliners on this one. And we can just listen to you guys who might have some experience about men and loneliness, because I don't. I really totally fucking love being alone. So there we go. Over to somebody else.
So Brendan, but we have been talking about this one time in Norwegian. And we had some questions about actually doing it or translate it to English. That's why I wanted to do it once again. And I think that's a great taboo team here in Norway. I think there's a lot of men who actually feels lonely.
Guy doesn't want to talk about it.
Well, I want to talk about it. If it was that, or I just put out a blog post called Linux porn. So I just put out a porn blog post for everybody to see, and I'd rather talk about that. But I realize that's not what's going to happen. It's going to talk about men and loneliness. So I leave it to somebody who has the experience with that. So please, somebody.
Okay. I've experienced being a man.
That I have, yeah.
Yes, Brendan, we start.
So what did we talk about the last time when this was in Norwegian?
Yeah, we start actually talking about, because in Norway, like 500 or 600 people commit suicide every year. Yeah. And it's like 2 out of 3 of them are men. And why is that? That was not a question like why to make you answer that one, but
my first impulse was maybe they were married.
I'm trying to get serious here, and then that joke comes in from the side.
Oh no! Well, I'm trying to sort of just stay calm, I guess, now. So somebody.
Okay, so let's. I'll try and start something and see how it goes. See where we end up. So it takes. A doctor said to me that it takes on average men 6 years if they get a sore knee before they go to the knee doctor. So he said, like, guess how long it takes for them to come to me. And I don't know, like, I thought I was extending a bit, and I said 2 years, and it's roughly like 6 years. So on average, he asked them, how long have you had this pain? About 6 years. And I think that there's a lot of guys that have a lot of pain. And since we're talking about men, a lot of men have a lot of pain inside, and they're lonely alone with their pain. And I think that's what we talked about in the Norwegian version, like how do we help, or how do we people that are lonely alone in their pain. And in one way it's like you could say, like, man the fuck up and catch a grip yourself. And then they'll never come back to you again. and then it's like, okay, so what's the signs of when you should? Because if I went to some friends and said, man, I'm really lonely and feeling really alone at the moment, alone and lonely with some pain that I have, when should we take our male friends serious, or when should we joke it to the side? That's like a nice way to start.
I think if they admit that they are lonely, then you really should take it seriously, because then it is a big problem.
Yeah, but now I'm coming from like the women's from us here, but do you admit that you are lonely? I mean, I think there's a lot of men, like, even though they are like in this great job and they have this perfect house and everything, that still they are lonely. They're not like, I think if the women left them, then they
Somebody's not lonely. Somebody's wanted. Now, I've got something on this one, because Catherine, the thing is, I have never met a man who just comes up to me and say, I'm totally fucking lonely. That doesn't happen. You actually have to see there is something wrong. But then when I ask people, it's like, okay, so what is your pain in life? And they go, what do you mean? What? And they just try to gloss it over or joke it aside or whatever. Then you just go for the kill. You go, okay, I can see there is something wrong. Just fucking spill it out. And you just drag that thing out of them until it actually pops out like an ripe pimple. And then they go, bang, this is the pain. Then you sit down and really take it seriously. But you have to usually drag it out of them. With women, it's like, oh, you look a little bit sad. And then they go, oh, you should hear me, blah, 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 blah. And here, just like a Niagara Falls come out. But with men, it's like bottled up. And you have to use like a crowbar to get in there. So, yeah.
In my
so what, yeah, Dexter, I was going to ask you, because you have done therapies with, I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of people. And I guess you have a fair share of lonely men as well.
Right. Well, of course, if somebody's coming to me, then they've gotten past their unwillingness to confront it and discuss it, or they wouldn't be in front of me. You know, but I think that I haven't noticed a lot of things. I've experienced it too. There were times where I was very vulnerable to loneliness. You know, I the very deep feeling of almost panic about it. And I think that men and women are generally kind of wired a little bit differently about a lot of things. I've observed a lot of that. Women are more prone to say, I like being by myself. You know, doesn't mean that they wouldn't like to have good male company. But I've known a lot of women, maybe it was just because they associated with me. I don't know. But
and then they look at you as like, I like being lonely. Don't worry.
I think of like a few fairly recent relationships where I appreciated being alone. For me, the relationships reached a point where I felt like I needed the distance and the space. But I experienced extreme loneliness because, for one thing, you know, I went through a period, about 15 years ago, where I was caring for a son who was dying of cancer, and I was in a state of perpetual shock that there weren't a lot of friends and family rallying around him with what he was going through. You know, and I think that when I lost him, maybe a lot of that transferred to me, and I was very, very vulnerable to feelings of loneliness. Now what I know from all my spiritual work is that distance from other people, in any sense, is sort of a superficial, a created illusion. You know, in a spiritual sense, there's nowhere but here. There is no distance. We are all here. And I've noticed, like, one way that I've worked on these energies of loneliness to a point where they don't seem to be any sort of issue for me, through two means, basically through the positive and the negative. I've done a lot of work to just allow the energies that are these unpleasant feelings rather than resist them. Just let them digest, you know, and the energies can be digested, and all feelings are energies. And I know that with my clients and people I speak to, everyone does better in the context of a session with me than they do applying it on their own. But many, many of my clients have had great success or good success applying that on their own. Instead of resistance to things, pushing back, trying to suppress them, is what gives things the feeling or the illusion of being very very invincible, you know, very daunting. And the less you resist something, the less overwhelming it is. You know, so
now that relates to what I have written about the rail scale, where the bottom of the scale is resist, and then stop resisting it, and there are 3 levels above that: acceptance, like, and enjoyment. So the first step is actually just stop resisting the thing. Right. And this is the same when people have a bad tooth, just to take a very physical pain of sorts. They go and just feel the pain, and oh, it's still there, and they touch it, and oh, it's still there, it's still there, and they touch it and they resist it, they touch it and they resist it, and they keep going like that forever. Just like nightmares, I might have nightmares. Oh, that's the nightmare. Damn, there it is, and then you resist it, and then you keep on creating it and then resisting it. It's like a civil war within yourself, and that needs to stop. And the way to stop it is to just accept it and let it just flow through you. It's completely fine then.
And if a person is even originating, it's still there. That is a form of protest to its existence, and protest is resistance. And one thing that I've learned in one of my next videos is going to be about when you characterize something as this is going to take forever to get through, this is too much, this is going to be really difficult. You're projecting something. You're projecting it that way, and you're putting energy into that. And it is a form of resistance to be creating and projecting something as this is going to be so difficult, I can't do this. Even looking at it that way, perception and experience, or perception and creation, are the same thing. We create things to experience them in exactly the way that we're experiencing them. And if you're saying, oh, this is the worst ever, it's so painful, I can't experience this, well, that's exactly how strong it will be, because you're feeding that energy into it, you know. And what I was getting to is, spiritually, there is no distance, there's no location. I'm not speaking theoretically or glibly, but this is I've experienced the reality of that. There's nowhere except here. You know, another thing I've noticed is that all life is sentient. All life has awareness. Plants, you know, I noticed that a very long time ago. But that's one reason I take a good walk every morning, and I feel this oneness, this part of the collective consciousness. It's not a loss of individuality. That idea that it's a loss of individuality is itself sort of a internal created opposition. You see that as a constant theme in science fiction and other things. But recognizing oneness, coexistence with all life, doesn't mute or take away one's individuality. That's sort of a misunderstanding. But in taking a walk like I do every day in a nice nature path, I will feel the togetherness, you know, and it's not just reinforcing it in my mind, but it's increasing my consciousness of it. And where you are
now a very, very, very timely comment here. Right now, Liverpool is playing Arsenal. And what's the score, Brendan?
It's 0-0.
Okay. Now, Liverpool is an extreme example of what Dexter is talking about here, because there is the oneness of the team Liverpool, and the fact that they have extremely competent, individualistic individuals, the players, on that team who are very different from each other, like from Salah to Mane, very different players, very different mentality, but still the oneness of the team. And the fact that they have this collective Liverpoolness over them does not take away anything from the individuality of Mo Salah, for instance. It's actually strengthening their individuality of having that team feeling. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But Dexter, could I ask you a question? That sounded like crazy tough what you went through, and that's also something that I said that you went through. That sort of I sort of take it that you've come out the other side. Sometimes we use that comment, "Oh, have you heard what Dexter's been through?" And then when you get to know Dexter, it's like, fuck, he hasn't come through it. He's still stuck in there somewhere. So I think that. So I hope that you've come through that. But this idea of there's probably some people that are going to listen to this session and think, okay, but Dexter said that he felt that loneliness, but what did Dexter do? Did you tell some friends? Did the friends listen? Did the friends take you serious? Did you get help? Did you go to another Dexter and get some help? Or what did you do? And what's the difference between you and other people that if you did take that step for getting help?
I did go to, in a sense, another Dexter. I've trained about a dozen other practitioners, and I worked with one of those practitioners, and we kind of take turns helping each other, just creating a context in which each of us could process our own energies, essentially, is what goes on. And I did a lot of that. And then I combined that with, as I said, the positive end. You know, any therapy or paradigm of spirituality that is strictly about removing negatives is not only incomplete, but becomes a wrong direction. Because if you're looking for negatives, you always find negatives. You know, at some point you might even be creating them. But it's very important. The whole point of addressing negatives, and what makes something a negative, is that it directly opposes a particular important aspiration that you have. Otherwise, whatever's going on would have no relevance, would have no particular meaning. So it's very important to connect with the underlying aspirations and that energy, recognize that within yourself and allow that to surface and experience it and become more whole and integrated through that, rather than the idea that, you know, you want to remove or get rid of something. It's all about retaking your territory, as I see it. So what I did was I worked with a practitioner that I myself trained, that I felt was particularly competent, to the point where I wouldn't be distracted by, well, this is how I would have done it, sort of a thing. That's what I've done. The two things, you know, recognizing more and more, just through my work, more and more I've come to recognize what I'm talking about in terms of our collective consciousness and the awareness of everything around us. And we're talking about mindfulness, and we're talking about mindfulness, we're talking about presence. Presence is, you know, and it's really about not resisting the presence that is our shared awareness and existence, and our encapsulating all that is life.
So basically, instead of chasing the bad feelings and trying to get rid of them, trying to get rid of my, whatever I could be struggling of, if I'm a guy who is lonely, it could be like suicidal thoughts, it could be anything. So instead of trying to remove that only, you can admit it, you can address it, but then you have to swiftly move into, okay, so what is the aspiration in life? What do you really want to live for? What is the stuff that you have some kind of passion for? And then focus on that.
Right. And it's important sometimes, I think, to recognize what your actual aspiration is. People say their aspiration is to acquire something or build something. And I will ask them, and what state of existence do you envision that creating for you? What's the end point of that? So a lot of times what somebody is seeing as the aspiration is actually their concept of what the vehicle is to accomplishing the underlying aspiration.
Yeah. So, so it could, a narcissist would be having the aspiration of being world famous, whereas singing songs would be a vehicle. So, or releasing a record could be a vehicle.
Well, being world famous, if that was their aspiration, I would know that what they really need to do is process all their feelings of fear of rejection and be able to have acceptance.
Yeah.
But I think you and I, from what I know of you, I think you and I both have the viewpoint that when there is a feeling of loneliness or any disturbing feeling, it is an opportunity to advance, to find a better, more expansive existence through examining that, opening that up and digesting it. That's how I see this for myself and for others. I believe we have a spiritual compass, which is always presenting exactly what we next need to address. And when we're feeling some particular disturbing feeling, that's our inner and higher self saying, take this right here, take this. Don't resist it, take it. This is it. When you can get through this, we're gonna be so much more in the flow of our aspirations.
How do you get through to, like, the Irish are like the best in the world at bottling this stuff up, followed closely by the Scots, like, after that, and even
then the Welsh, and then
even getting to some form of that realization takes a huge step for most people.
Well, yeah, but sometimes it's completely a subjective reality for me at this point. But I had the concept and the idea that it must be true, and just through my work it becomes more true. Sometimes things are just going to ring true. A person is, it's important to let something ring true, even if it's not entirely real to you, which is not the same thing. Let me give you an example of what I mean. If you understand that makes sense as a logical, ideal recognition, say, but it's not something you can fully grasp and embrace, then that becomes an aspiration to be able to get there.
Now, I have a point here, and that is, just like the old saying is, any PR is better than no PR. So bad PR is basically better than no PR, because then you have a channel to talk through, basically. So if everybody's, the whole freaking media world is after you and painting you as a devil, you can always use that to some degree to get some kind of action in the way you want it to be. And the same here. If there is a bad feeling, if there is this feeling that is overwhelming you and you're thinking about committing suicide, that might actually fundamentally be better than no feeling at all. Because then there is, then you in there is an opening, you can admit it, and then we can go further, and then we can look at, because if you have a tremendous bad feeling, there is a tremendous positive potential on the other side.
Yes.
Without any valleys, there wouldn't be any summits. So a flat life is actually the worst you can have. So people who have this hopeless pain inside, I would think, okay, I understand. So you're feeling a lot, but that's what life is about, feeling a lot. Now, let's see if we can find this positive aspiration that makes you feel a lot better. But that's easier to handle than a person who has no purpose, no feeling, is totally flatlining in life, because then you're basically close to dead. So
right. If somebody's coming to you complaining of that circumstance, then they're presenting it, and when somebody says they have a feeling of hopelessness, from my perspective, that's a valid energy right there. Let that feeling completely flow through you, the energy of that. When somebody says, I feel suicidal, and that does happen sometimes in sessions, they'll say, there's this feeling of being suicidal. Yes, you're right. I mean, that means that when we're done addressing that energy, there's going to be a big positive shift.
Yeah.
Basically, if somebody says, I can't feel anything, that's a feeling,
that's also a feeling. Yeah.
That's a feeling. And I just have them, all right, rather than try and work around that or do something else. Allow the energy that's expressing as that particular feeling or sensation, identify it. Where do you feel it in your body? What other feelings are associated with that? Just allow all of that to express. Whatever comes up for you is relevant. It's never random. And if you find resistance to it, that is something else to simply allow to let that resistance express and let it digest within you. Which is not generate resistance in the moment, but recognize that energy is there. Don't try to go around it, just allow the resistance to express. I was saying earlier, when people say, it's too painful, I won't be able to handle it, it's going to take too long. That's generating in that moment resistance. People don't realize that, but when I point it out to them, it's very plain. And then whatever they're addressing resolves and digests pretty fast.
Now, there's one thing that is particular to our era, our time, is that everybody's looking for safety. Everybody's looking for being comfortable, avoiding pain. Like in the 1800s, pain was such an integral part of life. You cut yourself, you stabbed your foot, there was the farm animals, and there was all kinds of shit happening. But now it's like, I'm trying to avoid conflict. I'm trying to avoid pain. I'm trying to avoid people. I'm trying to avoid a lot of stuff to sort of scramble into my little cocoon and be comfortable in a way. And that's a problem because people are not used to pain. People are not used to having problems in life they have to deal with, because everything is just served to you through Facebook, through internet, through Amazon, through carry my food back, or get it shipped to you. Pizza, you don't have to go out of your house. You can just get everything on your doorstep. And this is a problem, because the fact that somebody comes to me and say, I'm feeling suicidal, is, cool. You're actually feeling this. You're something happening. It's not cool as in funny, but it's cool that there is a potential there. There is something that we can work on. It's actually quite. There is gold in the other end of that rainbow, basically.
Yes, exactly.
And I want to bring it back to when we were talking on Norwegian, Brennan, because we were also talking in how can we make this how can we talk about this, not resist it. And we were talking about how fathers should talk to their sons early on already, not to be dealing with this in grown-up age, but we have to the fathers have had to talk about feelings we were talking about, for not if you get hurt on the football field or whatever, then you have to man up and don't cry, big boys don't cry, whatever. Then we have to start early. Brendan.
Yeah, I think this idea of if this is something that we see a lot more in men, which I don't really know, but let's just pretend that we see this a lot more in men, that then men are involved in trying to fix something with their sons. And it's this idea of men trying to be the alpha male with the sons around them and not recognizing any of the sons' achievements unless they're one-on-one. If they're one-on-one, it's good lad, my son, nice done today, well going. But actually saying that publicly, and not only at confirmation, not only at the wedding, it's or the funeral, the 3 times most men hear anything from their fathers is at those times, but in other settings as well, is recognizing the people for what they are and what the good that they do.
Yeah, I think
it's a general thing that also as an employer you should always give praise in public and corrections in private. So and do that. A lot of people are 90% doing good things or more, and then less than 10% doing bad things. Most people. There might be some political exceptions to this, but most people are 90% doing good stuff. But the 90% of the feedback they get is criticism or corrections, which is completely off balance. You should at least give as much praise as they're doing good, just for balance in life. So.
Yeah, I think we have to learn to be cautious, to be careful, to be mindful that you don't criticize a being. You criticize a thought, decision, or action, or expression. It's very important to make that distinction and make that clear when you are correcting someone.
Or even praising. I mean, it's not, because we have this, it's this word good. It's like in Norwegian, it's flink, and in English, it's like, oh, you're so good. And it's like, what the heck does that even mean? It's like, it just should be removed from the language, that you're not allowed to say to another person that, oh, what a good chap. Oh, what a good son. Oh, what a good wife. Like, what the heck is this good of describing people? It's a bit crazy.
Yeah, and then a lot of times when I'm on stage, and you experience this thing the same, Brendan, we get off the stage and people are like, oh, that was a really good speech, or that was a really good performance, or something. I never let that off the hook. I always ask, okay, so what was good about it? Because I don't learn anything from that was a good performance. That could mean anything to me, and it's probably not the same thing as he is thinking of or she is thinking of. So I need to get the specifics on that. And
yeah, but guide is always good. Guide is always good. That's like if the presentation could be crap or good or whatever, it could be whatever. But guide is always good. And this is like I think like Dexter, this is what something you were saying as well here.
Yeah,
I think that it's a cultural thing, really. I think that that in terms of fathers talking to sons, or for that matter, anybody talking to anybody, it should be understood that, you know, there's a culture and a game called manliness, you know. And I think that while we can deal with the fact that, you know, societally, an open public or whatever may not be received well to express one's weaknesses, but every man should come to understand that we all have them, and that you are not less manly for the fact that you have weaknesses, because everybody else is subject to all the same energies. And just like you, they tend not to give the appearance. Everybody thinks, and this is something I know from everybody I've worked with, everybody thinks that their most vulnerable, crippling feelings are unique. Nobody else is that bad on the inside, and they're uniquely unsolvable until they are solved, or until they experience having something solved. Everybody carries a bit of that, or at least until they learn better. And it's something I will mention to clients in sessions, you know, because I believe that the real point where you have completely overcome any internal opposition, anything that is destructive within you, is when you can laugh at yourself for having been so invested in whatever it was. When you can laugh about how seriously you've been about something, or you took a posture of righteous indignation, or, you know, or some form of acting noble about something. You know, that moment when you can laugh hysterically at just how silly that pretense is. You know, and that's the point where you've really 100% overcome it. It's a wonderful liberation to be able to laugh at recognizing the essence of one of your own foibles. It's a wonderful thing. You know, I think that we all should be giving each other permission to each give ourselves permission to recognize what we have in us, good and bad, and, you know, not to be suppressing or resisting it within ourselves.
That was really nicely said.
Yeah. You know, one thing that you can do is sort of to challenge a person who is very manly and thinks that, you know, I have to be brave and I have to fix everything and I have to get out and shoot the bear and be this mentally muscular guy that fixes everything around everybody else. Now, if you get to the point where the person actually opens up a little and says, you know, I have this loneliness going on, I really feel totally fucking lonely, then you can appeal to his bravery by saying, you know, how would it feel to actually go to your wife and say what you just said to me? Just, you know, rewind and just say that. Oh, that would be horrible, terrible. Okay. But wouldn't it also be brave? Wouldn't it just also be brave? Now you're trying to be as brave as you can, but you can't face this. Now that's a chink in your armor. That's a chink in your bravery. So let's see if you can be brave enough to actually rewind and say exactly what you told me to your wife or your son or your father or whoever.
But we've seen this so many times where we just ask people to look at each other, and the toughest men in the room are like avoiding eye contact all over the place.
Yeah,
And
that's
if you,
funny.
the longer a couple's married, the less they can. It's like 5 seconds, I guess, and the man, not even 5 seconds, 3 seconds, and the man says, it's like one of the guys said to me one time, "This is the worst fucking exercise I've ever done in my whole fucking life. I'm going to kill you for this." And that was in the middle of a workshop I was getting like for a customer. And I was like, yeah, just go and sit and look at each other. It's like, don't mess it up by saying anything.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that quite often you find this meek little shy girl sitting there and just doing the exercise without any problem, and this manly guy can sit there for 3 seconds and then he just either blows into anger or starts laughing or just can't fucking do it. So it's interesting to see. Yeah.
But what we always do in these sessions is give some practical tips, and the things that Geir and Dexter have been talking about, like in teaching, I always tell people promote this idea of confusion, because the more confusion you have around the area, the bigger the aha effect is going to be. So it's like, if you're confused in a subject, you're so lucky. So whenever my girls say to me, "Papa, I don't understand this maths," it's like, oh my God, you're so lucky. You're so lucky, like, because you know what's going to happen. And now they know. So we're high-fiving all over the place every time they don't know something. And like, "Papa, I don't know this." And they know they're going to get this aha feeling. And I think that's something that we could maybe get, like, I don't know how to make it concrete, like more practical, but this, what you guys have spoken about, like the lower you have, the more upside you're going to get out of these, let's call them just rough feelings. Do you want to correct what I've just said?
Yes, I do have something on this, and this is a great feeling, because when I look back at my life, the moments that actually are most passionate for me are moments where I didn't know something, where I was really curious about. You know, the first time I went to the university, walking into the Astrophysical Institute, I was 12 years old. This huge universe and this university and everything was completely chaotic to me, and it was a lot of confusion. But that feeling of not knowing and walking into the unknown with passion of trying to find out, those are the most intriguing and passionate moments in my life. So I know from at least my own standpoint, that when I walk into the unknown, willfully walk into the unknown, I know there is huge benefits there, huge benefits. And when people go on stage are frightened to death, I say, oh, I'm so envious, because now there is no feelings, no heart bumps, nothing. I don't sweat, I don't stutter, it's just fine. I miss the times where I was frightened to death to go up on stage, you know, because the benefits are so great when you get through it. Just knowing that. And then the practical thing that you were asking for is find something unknown, find something a little bit scary in your life and try to do that.
Perfect. Yes, I think we will wrap it up here because the time is flying.
And
Dexter,
also the second half is starting.
Dexter, it's really cool that you joined in on this session. You seem like a fun guy. I've seen some of your videos, and Guy's been talking about you as well. But you should join us. You should join us somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be cool. This is great.
Yeah, but before we leave, Brian, you have been awfully quiet today. You are like just listening, I see.
Yeah, you're speaking so much, so.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now the time is up, so.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Then.
Okay, so it's up to somebody to figure out what we're going to talk about next week, and I'll leave it to Catherine to sort of guide somebody to that point where we decide. So yeah, we'll just show up and do whatever.
Perfect. Next week, same time, I will post it on the Facebook group.
Yeah.
Nice going, cool. Katrina. Nice going, Brian, Guide, Dexter from the USA.
Thanks for joining, Dexter, and everybody. Okay.
Thanks for including me. Thank you for including me.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you for coming.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Screenshot.
Screenshot time.
Ah,
Screenshot.
3,
No, wait. I'm not ready.
But I have it.
Screenshot.
You just have to go pose. There you go.
There we go.
Oh, okay.